Amelia sat on the porch, the faint October California sunlight filtering through sparse tree branches, casting dappled patches of light onto the weathered wooden floor. A chilly breeze slipped through her thin sweater, biting at her skin, but she didn't stir. Her phone rested in her hand, her thumb absently brushing the now dark screen. She didn't cry. She didn't hurl the phone. She didn't scream. Yet her heart felt pierced by an invisible blade, each beat a fresh cut. Just minutes ago, her mother's voice, sharp, devoid of warmth, had crackled through the phone's speaker. "The backyard? Really, Amelia? That's not a wedding. It's a barbecue for the poor." Then the line went dead. No goodbye. No chance to explain. Just the harsh staccato beep, like a final punctuation mark. Amelia, who had built a tech empire from nothing, who Forbes had dubbed the youngest self-made millionaire of the decade, now sat motionless. She was no longer the little girl in a cramped Oakland apartment, working through the night on an old laptop to turn dreams into reality. She had overcome skeptical glances, mocking words, and sleepless nights to become a symbol of success. But to her mother, she was still just Amelia, the daughter who was never good enough, never meeting the intangible expectations her mother imposed. Her mother's words weren't just a rejection. They were a verdict, declaring Amelia's wedding, the most sacred moment of her life, commonplace, unworthy. The porch's rough wood scraped against the backs of her thighs, cold and unforgiving, as if reminding her of reality. She looked up at the maple trees in the yard, their vibrant red leaves trembling in the breeze, beautiful in their careless grace, oblivious to the pain tightening her chest. Her phone remained clutched in her hand, her knuckles white from the grip. A small, childish part of her, the naive part, still hoped it would buzz again. That her mother would call back, chuckle softly, and say, "I was kidding, Amelia. I'll be there." But that hope dissolved as quickly as her breath in the autumn air. Only silence remained. A thick, heavy silence, like an invisible wall rising between her and the woman who gave her life. It smothered every sound, every thought, leaving her with a bitter truth. Her mother would not come. Not because she was ill, not because of a busy schedule, not for any forgivable reason. Her mother would not come because Amelia's wedding, in her eyes, was a failure. No lavish banquet hall, no endless guest list of powerful names, no flashing cameras of paparazzi. Nothing for her mother to brag about to her book club friends or post on social media with glamorous hashtags. Amelia's wedding, a simple backyard ceremony with her 25 closest loved ones, fairy lights in mason jars, and hand-picked wildflowers, was not the stage her mother craved. It wasn't grand enough. It wasn't ostentatious enough. And so, it wasn't worth her mother's flight from New York. Amelia closed her eyes, drawing a long breath, trying to dispel the sensation of someone squeezing her heart. She was used to her mother's disdain. The cutting remarks, the disappointed glances, the comparisons to her sister Sophia, they were part of her childhood, her youth. But this was different. This wasn't a forgotten birthday party or a graduation her mother was too busy to attend. This was the day she would vow her life to Ethan, the man who saw her through the invisible scars her family left behind. This was the day she chose to start a new chapter, not as a millionaire or a CEO, but as Amelia, a woman who wanted to love and be loved authentically. And her mother, who should have been part of that moment, turned her back because it didn't meet her standards of extravagance. She opened her eyes, glancing at her phone. The screen remained dark. No calls, no texts, just silence, now an unwilling companion. Amelia knew, deep down, her mother wouldn't change her mind. She wouldn't call back. She wouldn't apologize. She wouldn't show up at the last minute with a smile and a hug. That truth weighed on her, like an invisible stone on her shoulders. Yet her eyes stayed dry. She didn't cry, not because she was strong, but because she'd long ago learned to hold pain inside. From the days when her mother poured all her attention on Sophia, leaving Amelia in the shadows. The wind grew stronger, carrying a maple leaf that landed on the porch beside her foot. Amelia stared at it, its vivid red a reminder that life moved on, even as her heart shattered. She set the phone down on the wooden floor and wrapped her arms around herself, as if trying to hold her broken pieces together. She had overcome countless challenges to become the woman she was today. Sleepless nights coding, rejections from investors, articles questioning her abilities. But no challenge cut as deeply as this moment, when the most important woman in her life rejected the most important day of her life. That wound was sharper than any rejection she'd ever faced, and it left a scar she knew would never fully heal. All right, before you settle in, take a sec to like the video and subscribe, but only if you're genuinely vibing with what I'm putting out here. And drop a comment below, letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always a thrill to see who's joining us from all corners of the globe. The back door creaked softly as Ethan stepped onto the porch. He wore no jacket, just a faded gray t-shirt clinging to his broad shoulders, a quiet reminder of the simplicity Amelia always cherished. In his hands were 2 steaming mugs of tea, wisps of vapor curling into the crisp October California air. The faint sunlight filtered through the maple trees, casting hazy patches of light onto the worn wooden floor where Amelia sat, motionless, her gaze lost in the void. The steam from the mug swirled around them, delicate as a silent veil, as if trying to shield her from the pain still gripping her chest. Ethan said nothing. He didn't need to. He'd seen that look in Amelia's eyes too many times, the red-rimmed, hollow stare of someone just wounded by family. It was the look she wore when her mother called to gush about Sophia's lavish wedding, never once asking about Amelia. The look she had when her mother sent a curt text, scolding her for missing a family event she hadn't even been invited to. Ethan had been by her side through those moments, quiet and steadfast, a beacon that never dimmed. He knew, without asking, that the call with her mother had left a fresh wound, deeper, sharper. He stepped forward, his canvas shoes brushing lightly against the wooden floor, careful not to shatter the silence Amelia was drowning in. He sat beside her, his shoulder grazing hers, a small touch that felt like a lifeline pulling her back from the abyss of her spiraling thoughts. He handed her a mug, his fingers grazing hers, warm and steady. Amelia took it, the heat from the ceramics seeping into her icy palms. She didn't look at him, but his presence was a wordless comfort, a promise that, even if the world crumbled, he was right here, beside her. They sat in silence, the only sounds the whisper of wind through the vibrant red maple leaves in the yard, and Amelia's faint, trembling breaths, as if she were holding back a tidal wave of emotion. The mug in her hand sent up tendrils of steam, mingling with the air, like an invisible thread binding them together. Ethan didn't push her to speak, didn't try to fill the silence with empty platitudes. He was simply there, shoulder to shoulder, letting her know she wasn't alone. This silence wasn't heavy like the one her mother left behind after the call. It was gentle, understanding, like an embrace without arms. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, as if the world had paused its turning, Amelia spoke. Her voice was small, choked with bitterness, each word a struggle to break free. She said no, because it's the backyard. She tried to laugh, but the sound was dry, fractured, like glass shattering on stone. Her eyes, red and glistening, held back tears. She stared at the mug, the steam blurring her gaze, as if she could hide the pain she knew Ethan had already seen. Ethan nodded slowly, his eyes soft but resolute, like a lighthouse in a storm. He set his mug on the wooden floor, his hands clasping together, thoughtful. He didn't rush to respond, didn't try to soothe her pain with shallow reassurances. After a moment, he spoke, his voice low and steady, each word laid down like a foundation stone. "It's not about the backyard, Amelia. It's because there's no chandelier, no red carpet, nothing she can flaunt to her friends." His words were gentle but sharp, slicing through the fog of hurt clouding her mind. Amelia turned to him, her breath shaky. Her eyes locked onto his, searching for a sign that he might be wrong, that her mother didn't truly think that way. But all she found was the truth she'd known for years, but hadn't dared face. Her mother didn't see her wedding. She didn't see the love Amelia and Ethan had built, the late nights they spent under the starry backyard sky, dreaming of a simple, whole future. Her mother saw only a missed chance to shine, to boast to the world that her daughter, a self-made millionaire, had thrown an event worthy of the family's prestige. Ethan's words were a mirror, reflecting the reality Amelia had avoided. She drew a deep breath, her chest loosening just enough to breathe again. She looked at him, the man who chose to stay by her side. Not just today, but through every day she felt unworthy. Not enough. Ethan saw her. Not Amelia the millionaire. Not Amelia her mother's daughter. But Amelia, the woman with simple dreams and an open heart. He saw her through the scars her family left, through the moments she doubted herself. And in this moment, when the world seemed to turn its back on her, his presence was all she needed. The steam from her mug had begun to fade, leaving a warmth in her hands. She gripped it tightly, as if clinging to an anchor in the storm. Ethan said nothing more, but his gaze never left her, gentle and unwavering. His shoulder still brushed hers, a reminder that she didn't have to face this pain alone. The backyard before them, with its wildflower beds and unstrung fairy lights, seemed to whisper a promise. Their wedding, whether her mother came or not, would be theirs, and theirs alone. Amelia closed her eyes, letting the warmth of the mug and Ethan's presence soothe her heart. She didn't know how she'd move forward, but with him here she knew she'd find a way. Amelia wasn't like the millionaires splashed across magazine covers or reality TV shows. No supercars lined her garage. No sprawling 1,000-square-foot mansion boasted an infinity pool. She chose a modest house in the San Francisco suburbs, where tree-lined streets and morning birdsong reminded her of the simplicity she treasured. The house wasn't flashy, but it was her and Ethan's sanctuary, a place where they'd transformed the backyard into their own little world. A glowing forest, every detail infused with love and meaning. The backyard wasn't vast, but under Amelia and Ethan's hands, it had become a living canvas. Hundreds of recycled glass jars, scavenged from weekend flea markets, hung from tree branches on delicate twine, each cradling a tiny LED bulb that Amelia had painstakingly wired night after night. Beds of wildflowers, cosmos, lavender, and verbena, sprouted from seeds they'd planted together, each one sown with hope and whispered stories under the fading light of dusk. At night, when the LEDs flickered to life, the backyard transformed into a fairy tale glade, where light danced on leaves and the breeze carried the sweet scent of flowers. It wasn't the setting of $1 million wedding, with no symphony orchestra or Forbes-listed guests, just 25 people, close friends, old colleagues, a few neighbors, who truly knew Amelia and Ethan, not for their fame or wealth, but for the moments they'd shared. Amelia remembered a call from a few weeks ago, when she'd eagerly told her mother about the wedding plans. She'd spoken of the backyard, the handmade jar lanterns, how she and Ethan wanted a small ceremony where they could stand barefoot on the grass and exchange vows under a starlit sky. But her mother's voice, from the other end of the line, had turned icy. "You're not doing some potluck, are you?" she'd asked with a scoffing laugh, as if the idea was an unforgivable offense. She didn't wait for Amelia to respond, as if the question was merely a way to assert that her daughter, a self-made millionaire, couldn't possibly stoop to such a common wedding. Amelia had fallen silent, her heart squeezed tight. She wanted to scream that it wasn't a potluck, but a feast of love, where everyone shared food, laughter, and stories. But she knew those things meant nothing to her mother. Her mother never asked about the paper lanterns Amelia had spent hours folding, each crease a promise for the future. She didn't ask about the nights Amelia sat on the wooden floor, hands aching from tying light strings, her heart alight with visions of the glowing moment on her wedding day. She didn't ask about the dress Amelia had chosen, a simple linen design, no brand, no sequins, but with 2 small pockets she adored, where she'd tuck the scraps of paper holding her and Ethan's vows. To her mother, a wedding only mattered if it could be flaunted, if it had a grand ballroom, a 5-course menu crafted by a celebrity chef, and photos snapped for social media clout. To her mother, a wedding was a stage. But to Amelia, it was her entire world, a world she and Ethan had built from small, honest, meaningful things. Amelia didn't need the extravagance her mother worshipped. She didn't dream of a ballroom with crystal chandeliers or a 5-tiered cake draped in gold leaf. She dreamed of a real wedding, where she and Ethan could stand among those they loved, exchanging vows in the very place they'd nurtured their love. That backyard wasn't just a patch of land. It was where they'd sat under starry skies, hand in hand, talking about dreams that didn't require money or fame. Where Ethan first said, "I love you," on a summer evening, the breeze carrying the scent of lavender from the flower bed they'd just planted. Where Amelia realized that, despite all the great successes the world praised, what she truly wanted was a simple life with the man who understood her more than anyone. Every jar lantern, every flower bed, every paper lantern in that backyard was a piece of that dream. They weren't things to show off, but fragments of the love story Amelia and Ethan had written together. Amelia often stood on the back porch, gazing at the yard, picturing the day she'd walk down a grassy aisle, lights twinkling in her hair, Ethan waiting at the end, his smile trembling like it did the day they met. She didn't need her mother to understand that dream. But her mother's rejection, the way she scoffed and called the plans a barbecue for the poor, left a lingering ache in her chest. It reminded her that, no matter how much she'd achieved, to her mother, she was still not enough. Amelia took a deep breath, the scent of earth and flowers drifting from the backyard. She pressed a hand to her chest, feeling the steady beat of her heart. A reminder that her dream didn't depend on anyone's approval. Her wedding wouldn't have red carpets or high-profile guests, but it would have love, something no amount of money could buy. And when she thought of Ethan, how he'd helped her hang each jar, plant each seed, she knew her world was complete. To her mother, a wedding might just be something to flaunt. But to Amelia, it was everything. A promise, a home, and a new beginning. Amelia was never the center of her family. In the world her mother crafted, the spotlight always belonged to Sophia, her older sister, the golden girl with the perfect smile and achievements her mother flaunted everywhere. Amelia, though a self-made millionaire who built a tech empire through sleepless nights and iron will, remained a faint shadow in her mother's eyes. She was used to standing on the sidelines, quietly watching as her mother lavished attention on Sophia, from lavish birthday parties to proud speeches at family events. But no memory was etched deeper in Amelia's heart than Sophia's wedding 4 years ago, a lavish, extravagant affair that was as painful for her as it was dazzling. That wedding took place in a 5-star New York hotel, where crystal chandeliers gleamed like captive stars and a red carpet stretched out like a proclamation of power. Sophia's gown, encrusted with thousands of Swarovski crystals, shimmered under the lights like a work of art, every stitch a testament to opulence. The menu, crafted by a Michelin-starred chef, featured dishes with names so elaborate Amelia couldn't recall them, only that each plate cost more than her monthly wage from her old part-time job. Her mother, in an expensive silk dress, her smile radiant, stood by Sophia, adjusting the train of her meters-long gown, tears sparkling as if she were crowning a princess. Every gesture brimmed with pride, as if the moment wasn't just Sophia's wedding, but the pinnacle of her mother's own life. And Amelia? She had no place in the spotlight. She was backstage, clutching a clipboard, an earpiece buzzing, running back and forth to ensure everything was flawless. She coordinated waitstaff, checked that champagne flutes were filled, made sure table flowers hadn't wilted, and even dashed out for extra napkins when a guest spilled wine. No one noticed her. No one invited her onto the stage. No one pulled her into the family photos shot by the professional photographer. Amelia, in a simple black dress bought on clearance, blended into the crowd like an anonymous worker. Not a sister, not a family member. A single photo captured her presence that day. A blurry moment, snapped from afar, as she wiped a wine stain from a table. Someone posted it on Instagram, tagging her as event staff. Amelia stared at that photo on her phone, in the small hotel room she'd paid for herself, and she laughed, a sad, bitter laugh. She didn't correct the caption. She didn't explain that she was the bride's sister, that she'd worked tirelessly to make Sophia's day perfect. She just accepted, as she always had, that in her mother's world, she had no place. That invisibility, though painful, had become part of her. Like an old scar she'd learned to live with. Amelia was accustomed to being pushed to the margins. From childhood, she watched her mother shower Sophia with praise. For perfect grades, for piano recitals. Amelia, with her love of books and odd ideas about technology, was always different, as if that were a flaw. When her mother showed off family photo albums, Amelia noticed most featured Sophia. She appeared only in a few blurry shots, tucked in the corner of the frame. But Sophia's wedding was the first time Amelia truly felt not just overlooked, but erased from the family's story. So when Amelia told her mother about her own wedding, a small, intimate outdoor ceremony in the backyard of the home she and Ethan had turned into a glowing forest, she braced for disappointment. Still, she held a sliver of hope that her mother would understand. She spoke of the glass jar lanterns, the wildflowers, the 25 closest guests, hoping her mother would see the love in those details. But her mother's brow furrowed, her voice icy. "Small?" she repeated, as if the word were an unforgivable sin. "Don't you want something memorable?" Those words struck like a blade, slicing through the last traces of hope in Amelia's heart. She wanted to scream, to yell into the phone, "I want something I'll remember, not something you can brag about." But she didn't. She stayed silent, feeling her heart shrink, small and invisible, just as her mother always saw her. Her mother didn't grasp that small to Amelia wasn't a lack of ambition. It was sincerity. It was choosing to stand barefoot on grass, holding Ethan's hand, vowing her life in the place they'd built their love. It was rejecting lavish ballrooms to embrace real moments, where paper lanterns and friends' laughter would be all she needed. But her mother didn't see that. She saw only a missed opportunity, a chance to boast that her daughter, a millionaire, had thrown a wedding worthy of the family's prestige. Amelia took a deep breath, trying to push away the memory of her mother's voice. The scar from the past still ached, but she knew she couldn't let it define her future. Her wedding would be hers, not her mother's, and she would do everything to make it a memory worth cherishing. Not for the world, but for her own heart. On the morning of this wedding, the San Francisco sky draped itself in a soft gray, like a delicate veil stretched across the horizon. No hint of rain, just a gentle hue that made everything in Amelia's backyard glow more vividly than ever. The wildflowers, crimson cosmos, pale lavender, reached up from their beds, as if welcoming the momentous day. Blue ribbons, hand-tied onto borrowed chairs from neighbors, swayed lightly in the breeze, like vibrant brushstrokes on a canvas. Amelia stood barefoot on the back porch, the cool touch of the old wooden floor grounding her. Her eyes sweeping over the backyard now transformed into a magical world, not through wealth or grandeur, but through the love and careful hands of her and Ethan. That backyard, once a simple patch of sparse grass, was now a living painting, every detail telling a story. The wooden chairs, each a different style, stood in neat rows, adorned with blue ribbons Amelia had spent hours cutting and tying. Among the trees, white paper lanterns hung suspended, swaying in the October breeze, like tiny stars fallen to earth. Each lantern was the result of late nights at the kitchen table, folding paper, tying strings, her hands sore but her heart alight with visions of the wedding day. She stood there, breathing in the scent of wildflowers and wood, feeling her heart unfurl, ready for the moment she'd long dreamed of. Inside the house, Clara, Amelia's closest friend, was carefully steaming the wedding dress. Not a haute couture piece from Paris or New York. The dress was a gift from Clara's heart. A creamy linen design, soft and unbranded, no sequins, but every stitch meticulous, like love sewn into the fabric. Amelia smiled as she watched Clara, steam rising from the iron, blending with the morning light. No lavish bridal suite, no team of makeup artists with expensive palettes. Amelia wanted to be herself, not a polished version. She stepped into the bathroom, twisting her soft brown hair into a loose bun, tucking 2 white jasmine flowers behind her ear. Their sweet fragrance wafted around her, a reminder that today she needed nothing but her love. As Amelia slipped into the dress, the linen hugged her body, light and sure, like a silent vow. She smoothed the skirt, feeling its softness under her fingertips, and in that moment, she was no longer a millionaire, no longer a CEO, just Amelia, a woman about to step into the most important day of her life. She looked in the mirror, not to check her appearance, but to remind herself she'd chosen this path, despite doubting glances, despite her mother's rejection. The dress, with its 2 small pockets she adored, would hold the scraps of paper with her and Ethan's vows. A little secret between them. At 4:12 p.m., as the sunset began to gild the backyard, the ceremony started. No grand prelude, no symphony orchestra, just the cheerful chirping of birds in the maple trees and the soft crunch of Amelia's barefoot steps on the gravel path. She stood at the start of the aisle, her feet on the cool grass, her heart pounding as if it might leap from her chest. Ahead, Ethan waited at the path's end, in a simple navy suit, his smile trembling with joy and nerves. His eyes locked onto hers, shining as if the world held only Amelia. She walked forward, each step a heartbeat, each breath a promise. The breeze stirred, setting the paper lanterns swaying, their light dancing along the path, guiding her to him. They needed no officiant, no scripted lines. Amelia and Ethan stood facing each other, hands clasped, speaking in trembling voices, as if the world had vanished, leaving just the 2 of them. Their words weren't meant to impress the guests, but to touch each other's hearts. Amelia couldn't recall exactly what she said, but she remembered the feeling, like her heart was flung wide open, letting Ethan in to stay forever. When they kissed, time seemed to pause. His lips were warm, gentle, and in that moment, every hurt, every rejection from her mother, dissolved like mist under sunlight. Applause rose from the 25 guests, not the polite claps of lavish galas, but a heartfelt, joyous sound, like a song born from the heart. Amelia smiled, her cheeks flushed, her hand still gripping Ethan's. She looked around, seeing beloved faces. Clara with glistening eyes, the neighbor who lent the chairs, an old college friend, all here, not for fame or wealth, but because they loved her and Ethan. The backyard glowed under the sunset, paper lanterns shining like stars, and Amelia knew, even without her mother there, this moment was perfect. This wasn't just a wedding. It was a day of love. The love she and Ethan had built, one no one could take away. As the sun set, Amelia and Ethan's backyard transformed into another world. The sky shifted from soft gray to a deep blue, speckled with the first stars. Dinner was served on a long, rustic wooden table set in the middle of the yard, where large ceramic pots released warm, inviting aromas. No elaborate menu or white uniformed waitstaff, just home-style dishes, prepared by friends and neighbors, passed around amid bursts of laughter. Freshly baked bread, crisp on the outside, soft within. Herb salads, flecked with lavender and basil, carrying the taste of earth and sky. Steaming bowls of hearty stew, rich and comforting, evoking the simple family meals Amelia always cherished. Everyone gathered around the table, shoulder to shoulder, wine glasses and juice cups clinking with clear, joyful sounds, blending with the gentle breeze rustling through the trees. There were no servers hovering with silver trays, no rigid rules of a lavish gala. Instead, the air brimmed with sincerity. A friend told a funny story, sparking laughter that echoed over the ivy-covered fence. A neighbor's child darted around the table, clutching a blue ribbon that had fallen from a chair, and everyone smiled, unbothered. Amelia sat among those she loved, feeling the warmth of Ethan's hand resting lightly on hers. She looked around, seeing familiar faces. Clara, her best friend who sewed her wedding dress. The neighbor who brought chairs at dawn. The old colleague who'd stayed up late with her on tech projects. This wasn't just a wedding reception. This was her home, built from love and genuine connections. As night fell completely, the paper lanterns and glass jars hanging from the trees began to glow. Hundreds of LED bulbs, each wired by Amelia's hands, sparkled like a swarm of fireflies, turning the backyard into a shimmering dream. The warm golden light danced on the leaves, illuminating the wildflower beds, creating soft patterns of light and shadow, like a painting crafted from love and luminescence. Clara, sitting beside Amelia, leaned in and whispered, "It looks like a Hollywood movie." Amelia smiled, shaking her head gently. No, it wasn't Hollywood. It was home. The home she and Ethan had built together, where every corner held their memories. Amelia stood, her bare feet touching the cool grass, and Ethan pulled her to the center of the yard. Music played from a small speaker, a gentle acoustic song, and they began to dance. The lantern light glimmered in Amelia's brown hair, like tiny stars caught in her strands. Ethan's hand held hers firmly, warm and steady, guiding her in a soft spin across the grass. She looked into his eyes, seeing his familiar smile, tender yet trembling, as if he still couldn't believe they'd reached this moment. They danced, not to perform, but to feel each other, to melt into the light and music, to affirm that their love was real, no matter what. But amid the joy, a corner of Amelia's heart remained heavy. She knew her mother wasn't here, didn't see what she saw. She didn't see Ethan holding her hand, his fingers tightening in a wordless promise. She didn't hear the laughter of friends, didn't smell the lavender scent mingling with the woodsy aroma of the table. She didn't witness the lanterns glowing, turning the backyard into a magical world. To her mother, it was just a backyard, a word she'd spat with disdain, as if it signified failure. That was why she didn't come. Not because she was busy, not because she couldn't, but because she didn't want to appear somewhere unworthy of her boasting. Amelia recalled this invitation she'd sent her mother, carefully crafted on embossed paper, tied with a fine white silk ribbon. She'd spent hours choosing the paper, writing the words by hand, hoping her mother would see the love in every detail. But there was no reply, only a curt text, days later, like a silent slap. "Looks like a school craft project." Amelia had read it in the living room, the phone's glow lighting her face, and she gave a sad smile. Not out of joy, but because she realized her mother would never understand. The simplicity, the sincerity, the things that made this wedding meaningful, all were invisible to her. To her mother, a wedding was only valuable if it could be photographed, posted online, and racked up thousands of likes. But to Amelia, that simplicity was what she cherished most. She closed her eyes, letting Ethan's warmth and the rhythm of the dance soothe her pain. The lanterns still shone, their light brushing her face, and she felt the night's gentle, comforting breath. Her mother wasn't here, and perhaps never would understand. But those who were, Ethan, Clara, the friends and neighbors, they saw her, loved her, and that was enough. Amelia opened her eyes, meeting Ethan's gaze, and in that moment she knew this backyard, with its lights and laughter, was all she needed. It wasn't her mother's dream. It was hers, and it was coming true, more radiant than any ballroom in the world. 2 weeks after the wedding, with the glow of paper lanterns still vivid in Amelia's mind, an email from Lena, her filmmaker friend, landed in her inbox. Attached was a short video, a wedding gift Lena had quietly crafted. Amelia sat on the living room sofa, the morning San Francisco light streaming through the window, illuminating her laptop screen. She clicked play, unsure what to expect. The video lasted 90 seconds, without narration, only the soft whispering notes of a piano. Each frame was a piece of their wedding day, captured with Lena's storyteller's finesse. Ethan at the ceremony's start, wiping sweaty palms on his pants, his eyes alight with nervous joy. Amelia, barefoot, carefully tying a blue ribbon around a jar of wildflowers, a gentle smile on her lips. Then the two of them dancing under the twinkling lanterns, their bare feet brushing the gravel, as if the world held only them. Amelia's throat tightened. Tears slipped silently down her cheeks, not from sadness, but because the video touched a deep place in her heart. It wasn't just footage. It was her memory, preserved with all the sincerity and beauty she and Ethan had created. She rewatched it, then again, each time feeling as if she were reliving the moment. The lavender scent in the air, the laughter of friends, Ethan's warm hand in hers. When Ethan walked in with a mug of coffee, she pulled him to sit beside her, saying nothing, just pressing play again. He watched in silence, his gaze intent, and when the video ended, he drew a long breath, his voice low and warm, like a fairy tale. Amelia nodded, unable to speak, feeling as if Lena had turned their wedding into something timeless, a legend told through light and music. That evening, Amelia opened Instagram, her fingers hovering over her phone, hesitant. She hadn't planned to share the video with the world. It was too personal, too sacred. But something in her, a small desire, urged her to preserve the moment beyond herself. She posted it. No hashtags, no lengthy caption, just a simple line. October 8th, Homegrown Love. She hit share, set the phone down, thinking a few friends would watch, smile, and that would be enough. She went to bed, unaware that by morning, everything would change. When Amelia woke, her phone was aglow with dozens of notifications. The video had racked up 20,000 views overnight. She blinked, thinking it was a glitch, but the number kept climbing. By noon, it crossed 50,000. Comments flooded in from strangers she'd never met. "This is the most beautiful wedding I've ever seen. I cried watching this. It feels like real love." Amelia read, her heart racing, both stunned and unsettled. She hadn't prepared for this, for the world to see her backyard, to watch her and Ethan dance barefoot, to glimpse the jars she'd spent months crafting. Then a message arrived from a design magazine blogger. "We'd love to feature this wedding in our next issue. Would you be okay with that?" Amelia looked at Ethan, who just shrugged, smiling. "Let the world see what you did." By the weekend, the video appeared on Vogue, The Knot, and a viral article with a bold headline, "The most beautiful backyard wedding you'll ever see." Each piece praised the simplicity, the sincerity, the beauty of the handmade details. From the paper lanterns to the wildflowers, the blue ribbons to Amelia's smile. She read the words, feeling as if she were seeing her life through someone else's lens, both strange and moving. But the joy dimmed when her phone buzzed with a call from Sophia, her sister. Sophia's voice wavered, unlike her usual confidence. "Why didn't you say it was this beautiful?" Amelia went silent, unsure how to respond. Sophia didn't ask about her love, about Ethan, or what made the day special. She asked because of the video, because of a beauty she hadn't expected. Then a text from her mother arrived, a quiet punch to Amelia's heart. "This is the wedding I wasn't invited to?" Amelia stared at the screen, her heart heavy, as if a stone had settled on her chest. She traced her finger over the message, rereading, searching for a shred of genuine emotion, but found none. Her mother had been invited. Amelia had sent the embossed card, tied with silk, carrying all the hope of a daughter wanting her mother there. But her mother had refused, not because she was busy, not because of distance, but because a backyard wasn't worthy. Now, with the video going viral, with the world marveling at the wedding's beauty, her mother didn't speak of her daughter's love, or the joy she'd missed. She only worried about looking bad for her absence, about the family's image in strangers' eyes. Amelia set the phone down, her gaze drifting to nowhere. Tears didn't fall, but the pain simmered, like an old scar brushed anew. The video might have touched thousands, but it couldn't reach her mother, not in the way she'd once hoped. She looked out at the backyard, where the jars still hung, now dark, and thought of Ethan, of those who were there, of the love that made the day. The world might see its beauty, but only those present truly understood. And her mother, with all her absence, was not one of them. Amelia sat in the living room, the afternoon San Francisco light streaming through the window, illuminating the laptop where she'd just rewatched the wedding video. That video, with its lanterns and laughter, had spread across the world, but it still hadn't reached her mother, not in the way she'd once hoped. After her mother's defensive text, Amelia decided to do one last thing. She sent a short message, an invitation to Lena's studio, where the full video would be shown. No explanations, no arguments, just a chance for her mother to see what she'd missed. She wasn't sure her mother would come, but she needed to close this chapter, not for her mother, but for herself. The day arrived, and Amelia's mother appeared at Lena's small studio, 10 minutes late, as if the delay were a statement. She wore a gleaming pearl necklace, a silk dress hugging her frame, stepping in like a VIP at a charity gala. Amelia stood at the door, offering no smile, no embrace, just a slight nod to invite her in. The studio was simple: 2 upholstered chairs, a small screen, a wooden table with a projector. No red carpet, no flashing lights, just a heavy silence, like the air before a storm. Amelia said nothing, no greetings, no attempt to fill the void with small talk. She simply pressed play, letting the video tell the story she couldn't put into words. The screen lit up, and the full video, 20 unedited minutes, began. No narration, no grandiose soundtrack, just the raw sounds of the wedding day. The crunch of gravel under guests' feet, the bright laughter of close friends, the breeze carrying the scent of lavender through the trees. Amelia tying a blue ribbon around a jar of wildflowers, her hands trembling with anticipation. Ethan at the end of the aisle, wiping sweat from his brow, his smile a mix of joy and nerves. Then the moment they exchanged vows, Ethan's voice thick, trembling but certain. "You are my home." Each frame was a piece of their love, captured not to impress, but to preserve a simple, profound truth. Amelia's mother sat rigid, arms crossed, her face cold as a statue. Amelia glanced at her, waiting for a familiar sign, a scoff, a furrowed brow, a biting remark about the backyard. But none came. Her mother sat motionless, eyes fixed on the screen. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Amelia noticed her mother blinking faster, as if holding something back. By the 18th minute, as the video shifted to Amelia and Ethan dancing under the lanterns, the glass jars glowing like tiny planets, her mother exhaled, a long, shaky breath, as if waking from a dream. Amelia said nothing, her hands gripping tightly under the table, waiting. When the video ended, the screen froze on a still frame. The backyard at night, empty chairs, the jars faintly glowing like embers in the dark. Her mother stayed silent. So long Amelia thought she'd leave without a word. Then she spoke, her voice low, almost a whisper. "It looks expensive." Amelia's heart clenched, not in anger, but in realization that her mother still didn't understand. She replied, her voice calm but sharp. "Does that matter? I invited you. You didn't come." The words weren't an accusation, but a truth, simple and undeniable. Her mother stammered, defensive. "You didn't make it clear." But Amelia cut her off, for the first time in her life refusing to let her mother steer the conversation. "I didn't need your approval," she said, her eyes locked on her mother's. "I needed you there." Her mother looked away, lips pressed tight, the pearl necklace glinting under the studio light like a feudal shield. She didn't respond, didn't apologize, didn't reach out to hug her. When she stood and left, her steps light but resolute, Amelia wasn't surprised. She didn't embrace her, and Amelia didn't expect it. The studio door closed, leaving a different silence. Not the cold punishment her mother often wielded, but a belated acknowledgement, as if she'd finally seen, even just a little, what she'd missed. 6 months later, a small package appeared on Amelia's porch. No sender's name, just her name in familiar handwriting. Inside was a photo from Sophia's wedding 4 years earlier. Amelia in the background, holding a tray of champagne, her gaze lost, invisible on her sister's day. On the back, a small note. 2 lines. "I didn't see you then. I see you now." No signature, no explanation, but Amelia didn't need one. She held the photo, her fingers tracing the words, feeling as if a door had closed, not with reconciliation, but with clarity. She didn't frame the photo. She tucked it into her wedding album, behind a picture of her and Ethan dancing under the lanterns, barefoot on gravel, their smiles radiant in the warm golden light. That was her story. Not about her mother, not about the approval she'd once craved, but about the love she'd chosen, the home she'd built, and the people who stayed. Her wedding didn't need millions to be memorable. It only needed heart, hers, Ethan's, and those who joined her to light up that backyard. Amelia closed the album, a faint smile on her lips, knowing her story was complete, not because her mother finally saw, but because she'd always seen herself. And you, my dear audience, brace yourselves for the next twist in this jaw-dropping story. So before you get too cozy, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you're truly loving what I'm doing here. And drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always a thrill to see who's joining us from all corners of the globe.